In the year 610 CE, somewhere between 95 and 99% of the human population could not read or write. Literacy was reserved for elite scribes, religious scholars, and a tiny fraction of wealthy merchants. The vast majority of humanity lived and died without ever learning to write their own name. And in this context, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made a prediction that seemed to contain an impossible contradiction. He said that in the future, writing would become widespread, but at the same time, knowledge would decrease and ignorance would spread to a 7th century mind. This made no sense. How could writing become common while knowledge disappears? Would not widespread literacy automatically mean more knowledge? Yet 14 centuries later, we are living in the precise fulfillment of this prophecy in ways that would have been impossible to predict. We have achieved near universal literacy. 86% of the global population can now read and write, something that would have seemed like paradise to ancient scholars. Yet at the same time, verified academic studies show that critical thinking is declining, attention spans are shrinking, depth of knowledge is decreasing, and despite having more information than any generation in history, people are more susceptible to misinformation and less knowledgeable about fundamental facts than previous generations. So let me show you the exact Hadith, the authentication, and the shocking modern data that proves we are watching this prophecy unfold in real time. The prophecy comes from Sahih Bukhari in the Book of Knowledge. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Among the signs of the hour will be the disappearance of knowledge and the appearance of ignorance, and writing will be widespread." This hadith has been authenticated by every major Islamic scholar with a verified chain of narration going back to the companion Anas ibn Malik. And here is why this prediction was impossible through human logic. In the 7th century, there was a direct correlation between literacy and knowledge. The few people who could read and write were the most knowledgeable members of society, so predicting that writing would spread while knowledge decrease was a paradox. It would be like predicting that telescope technology would advance while astronomical knowledge would decline. It makes no logical sense. Yet here is what makes this prophecy undeniable. Starting in the 20th century, global literacy rates began to skyrocket. UNESCO data shows that in 1820, only 12% of the world could read. By 1900, it reached 21%. By 1960, it was 42%. And today it stands at 86% and rising. We have achieved what ancient scholars would consider a utopia of universal education. Nearly everyone on earth can now read and write. Children in the poorest nations have access to books and schools. The internet has made written information available to billions. Yet at the exact same time that literacy exploded, something else happened that nobody expected. The depth and quality of knowledge began to decline. Studies published in academic journals over the past 2 decades have documented a phenomenon that researchers call the shallowing of knowledge. A 2020 study in Nature found that despite having access to more information than any previous generation, college students today score lower on tests of general knowledge, critical thinking, and analytical reasoning than students from the 1980s. A Stanford University study published in 2021 found that the average attention span has dropped from 12 seconds in 2000 to 8 seconds in 2021, shorter than a goldfish. And this is not due to lack of literacy, it is happening precisely because of how modern literacy is being used. People can read and write, but they are reading tweets instead of books, writing text messages instead of essays. And a 2019 study in psychological science found that the more time people spend consuming short-form written content on social media, the worse their reading comprehension and retention becomes. So we have a generation that is technically literate, but functionally ignorant. Exactly as the prophecy stated, writing is widespread, but knowledge has decreased, and ignorance has spread. And here is the part that should make skeptics deeply uncomfortable. How did a 7th century prophet predict not just universal literacy, which was already statistically improbable, but the specific paradox that literacy would increase while knowledge quality would decrease? There was no framework in his time to understand this, no precedent, no trend to extrapolate from. In his era, literacy equals knowledge was an absolute truth. Yet he predicted a future where that equation would break down, where people would have the ability to read and write, but would use it in ways that made them less knowledgeable. And we can verify this in multiple ways. UNESCO reports show global literacy at all-time highs. Yet surveys from organizations like Pew Research and the National Assessment of Educational Progress show declining general knowledge. A 2018 study found that 74% of Americans could not name all 3 branches of government, despite near universal literacy. A 2019 European survey found that 60% of young adults could not identify basic historical facts that previous generations knew. Researchers call this the Wikipedia effect. People have access to infinite information, but retain almost nothing because they know they can Just look it up again. This is writing being widespread while knowledge decreases, exactly as foretold. And the spread of ignorance is even more documented. A 2021 study published in Science found that misinformation spread 6 times faster than factual information on social media platforms. People are reading and writing more than ever, but the content is increasingly shallow, inaccurate, and driven by emotion rather than fact. We have billions of people writing and sharing information daily, yet collective knowledge depth is declining. This is the precise fulfillment of a prophecy that made no sense when it was first spoken. And here is the question that demands an honest answer. If Muhammad, peace be upon him, was guessing, how did he guess a specific paradox that contradicted all observable patterns of his time? How did he predict that the very thing that should increase knowledge, widespread literacy, would coincide with its decrease? The only logical explanation is that he was describing information from a source that could see the future. And if this prophecy is accurate, and the data proves it is, then what else did he say that we should be paying attention to? Because this is not vague symbolism, this is specific, measurable, verifiable fulfillment. You can check UNESCO literacy statistics yourself. You can read the academic studies on declining knowledge depth. You can observe it in your own life. How many people do you know who can write but have never read a book? Who can type but cannot think critically? Who have access to all human knowledge but choose ignorance? That is this prophecy manifesting in real time. So if you want to see more prophecies backed by data and verified sources, subscribe, because we are going to examine every prediction with evidence you can independently confirm.